There's a version of you that exists on stage and a version that exists at home. The distance between those two, that's the integrity gap, and it's growing. Welcome to Daily Power Boost, Ignite Your Potential, the podcast where your transformation begins. I'm Sean Michael, and each day I'll bring you quick, impactful insights and action steps to fuel your personal and professional growth. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a leader, or someone ready to break limits and ignite greatness, this is your daily power boost to crush obstacles, stay focused, and awaken the extraordinary potential within you. Because remember, greatness begins within. Let's go. Welcome back to Daily Power Boost. Last episode, we talked about private victories, why your hidden disciplines matter more than your public win. Today, I want to address what happens when those two start to split. Here's the danger most leaders don't see. The gap between who you are and who you present doesn't open overnight. It opens one small compromise at a time. You say one thing publicly, but do another privately. You post about balance, but work until midnight. You teach boundaries, but answer emails on vacation. You preach rest, but wear exhaustion like a badge. At first, the gap is small. You can manage it, justify it, tell yourself it's temporary. But gaps don't stay small, they grow. In 2016, I gave a speech on Facebook Live for an event called I Am Worthy. I talked about honoring yourself, about not shrinking, about pursuing what you're called to do, and I meant every word. But a year later, I put my dream of becoming a coach on hold, told myself it was practical, strategic, the responsible thing to do. Fast forward to November 2023. I'm at an event with 300 other coaches, and we just had this powerful teaching. A notification pops up on my phone. 7 years ago today, you went live speaking about, are you disrespecting yourself? It hit me like a punch to the chest. 7 years. 7 years since I'd given that speech about not shrinking. And I'd spent every single one of those years playing small. I stood up in front of those 300 people and said it out loud. I've been disrespecting myself for 7 years, and I'm done. I vowed right there, no more playing small, no more putting my dreams on hold. Because the gap between what I'd said in 2016 and how I'd lived since then, it wasn't just a mistake. It was 7 years of slow erosion I didn't even see happen. Here's what happens when the integrity gap grows. You start justifying the gap, saying, this is different, this is urgent, this once. You compartmentalize, that's my public leadership, this is my private life, they're separate. And you rationalize, I'm still doing more than most people, I'm fine. But you're not fine. You're fracturing. Because every time you say one thing and do another, you're teaching yourself that your word doesn't matter. And if your word doesn't matter to you, why would it matter to anyone else? Here's the shift. Integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about closing the gap between who you say you are and who you actually are. Closing this gap is going to require honesty, not performance. It means you start living what you're teaching. You admit when your private life doesn't match your public message. You make the hard decision to either change the message or change the behavior. Because you can't lead with integrity if there's a growing distance between your words and your life. Let me reframe what integrity actually is. Integrity is not perfection. It's consistency. It's the way you lead your team matching the way you lead your family. It's the values you post about matching the decisions you make in private. It's the boundaries you teach matching the boundaries you actually hold. When your public and private lives are in alignment, you don't have to remember what version of yourself you're supposed to be. You can just show up whole, honest, integrated. That's integrity, not perfection, wholeness. And that wholeness, that's what we're building tomorrow. The identity audit, checking if you're still leading from your core. Because the integrity gap doesn't just happen in behavior, it happens in identity. You become who the market needs you to be and forget who you actually are. But first, let me wrap this up for today. Here's your integrity gap practice. Write down 3 things you teach, preach, or post about publicly. Now ask yourself, am I actually living this or just performing it? Be honest. Where's your gap? Because you can't close a gap if you won't acknowledge it. And the leaders who last are not the ones with no gaps. They're the ones brave enough to see them and close them down. The most exhausting way to live is to be one person in public and another in private. Because you're not just managing reputation, you're managing a lie. Lies cost energy, but integrity creates it. So close the gap, not by performing better, but by living truer. This was the integrity gap, when who you are and who you present start to split. Tomorrow, the identity audit, checking if you're still leading from your core. Because integrity isn't just about behavior, it's about identity. Every 6 months, you need to ask, am I still me? With strength and heart, I'm Sean Michael. Stay close. Thanks for tuning in to Daily Power Boost. Ignite your potential. Remember, transformation starts with action. So take today's insight, make it your own, and awaken your inner potential. Because remember, greatness begins within. Catch you tomorrow for your next Power Boost.